everyone, and welcome you to this webinar. I was really excited to be joined by Vasilina, who's got a lot of experience in a very specific payment and banking challenge, which is the luxury payments. My name is Viktoria Soltesz, and this is the Soltesz Institute. And as you know, we are bringing the ethical and transparent payment and banking industry back on track. And that's why we are inviting different professionals, payment experts, banking professionals to share their journey and share their experience around a specific topic. So this is how we are creating an industry when the payment and the banking knowledge is shared between everyone. So I would like to encourage everyone, if you have any kind of comments or any questions to us, then after the webinar, please reach out to us, because we would like to hear about that and discuss the real-time challenges that you also face. So today's topic is a very exciting one, which is going to be about the payments in the luxury industry, the future of luxury payments. We are going to discuss all the challenges, the innovations, the strategies, and all of the opportunities what you can see in 2025 for the high value transactions. As you know, that luxury payments is not just about the product itself, but it has to have a different approach to payments and banking, because these are high value transactions. So welcome, Vasilina. Please tell us a bit more information about yourself, and how did you ended up to be an expert on luxury payments?
Well, thank you very much, Victoria, for these introductions, and I'm very happy to be here and to share my experience and my perspective on the payments. I have been actually in the luxury industry for almost all of my career. So I'm born in luxury, and I really spent my 20 years of professional experience in luxury. And my background is really finance. I'm a qualified treasurer to start with, and I think it's something which happens quite a lot in the retail space. The payments are coming from kind of finance treasury territory, because in the past that used to be something which was managed by the banks, and it's part of the treasury merit to manage payments. When I started to look into the payment space, I quite quickly realized that the payments changed quite a lot. It's no longer anymore about the back office activity, or it's no longer account receivable, account payable topic. It really became more and more an integral part of the customer experience, and especially in luxury, this is extremely important. The luxury brands, they shifted, or they changed quite a lot from being kind of product-centric to customer-centric, and clearly payments is part of the customer journey, of the customer experience. And also there is now a lot of innovation on the technology side. There is never ending evolution in the regulatory side. You need to think about protecting your bottom line from fraud, but also not to upset your customers when your fraud tools are too strict, or fraud rules are too strict. So it's really a topic which evolved a lot from a traditional finance role to a much more business capability role in a retail space. And as I mentioned, for luxury, it's customer experience is really key. We talk about a lot that in luxury, it's not about transactions, but it's about experience or about emotions. And that's why there is a lot of now investment in the payment capabilities by the luxury brands.
I'm very excited about this topic, because I completely agree with you that payments and banking today affect customer experience a lot. But somehow the startups, or when we are developing a new product, it is still somehow considered as a part function of finance, planning for the payment provider, selecting who is the vendor, obviously setting up all the payment and the banking flows. So I think it's a very important thing to talk about, that payments and banking everything is a part of the user experience, the customer journey. And you as a treasurer obviously have limited capabilities to plan for the user experience and the customer journey from that finance background. So it's very interesting to talk to someone who has the payment background and the finance background, but also has a very good understanding of the customer journey as well. I think it's going to be a very interesting conversation about luxury payments. As we usually do, we had some questions from the audience before the webinar. So the audience is very curious about the basis of the luxury payments. So we are going through different questions and we are replying to them as we go along, and this gives a nice structure to the conversation as well. But feel free to add anything, or if you have any other things to mention, that please add this to the conversation. So the first question what we have is that what are the biggest challenges luxury brands face when setting up payment solutions, and how they try to cater for that experience that you mentioned for their clients? What do you see in your work, in your real life, that what are those biggest challenges when it comes to payments?
I think it's really, as I mentioned before, now it's in luxury, the personalization, the brand, the loyalty, the experience, very important. And I think one of the challenges is to really find the right payment and technology provider who really understand the luxury DNA, the luxury requirements, because it's true that in the luxury space, whether it's in boutique or whether it's online, payment is the last step, and it's often very high transaction values. And if the payment fails for whatever reason, it can be a technology, it can be a fraud solution which didn't work. It's very important to have, or it can be just a very high transaction value which exceeds all the limits and ring the bell of alert. It's very important to have the partner on the payment side, or rather I would say partners, because I don't think you should have one single partner, who really understand the luxury consumer, the luxury specificities, who can be here with their own white glove service to help the retailers to basically process the payments in as seamlessly as possible, to bug all the problems with the terminals as fast as possible. So the service provider is very important. I think the choice of the technology is also very important, and it's also quite challenging to find the right technology, because now we are talking a lot about omni-channel and how do you basically offer a seamless experience across all touch points, whether it's social media, whether it's in store, whether it's online. I think the technology choice is very important as well. And I think another challenge which I speak a lot about is also the team, the internal people who are in charge of payments. I think as I mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, the role of payment changed a lot, and the skill set which is required to manage payments is no longer traditional finance. It's really now you have people who are looking into UX, who really understand the technology, who can speak to technology people, who can speak to marketing people and commercial people. So I think the skill set of the internal team is also very important, and sometimes it's quite a challenge to find the right people to manage payments, because either you have finance people or technology people, but it's very difficult to find the blend of a skill set which is commercial and technology and finance at the same time. That's one of the challenges as well.
Completely agree with you, and you really hit the nail on the head when you said that provider or providers, because that's what we also advocate for, that have multiple providers, have also a backup, and then diversify your risk. And I think here in the high value luxury payment, it's more important than ever that the payment process is going to be seamless, and you are not embarrassing the customer saying, oh, your card has been declined, oh, unfortunately, I have to swipe your card again, because that could really ruin the whole experience, mainly when we are talking about luxury payments. So this cascading, falling back to multiple providers is extremely important. Usually, but here, especially when it comes to the good experience for the client. What do you think? There's a next question here, that how does fraud prevention differ in luxury payments compared to standard e-commerce transactions? We understand it's high value, so obviously it's higher risk. In case that there is one scam or one fraud, then as a pool for the financial institution, it can be really affecting the portfolio. Do payment providers treat high value transactions very differently, or it is just something like an aggregated multiple transaction? Or what is their approach to these high value transactions? How do they approach this fraud question?
Yeah, I think on the fraud side, it's definitely, as you said, it's quite different. It's high value transactions, but it's also a low volume business. It's a small number of transactions. If you compare that to more mass retailers or other fashion brands where you have the number of transactions is much higher. Historically, in the luxury space, because of that, the fraud processes relied a lot on the what we call rule-based fraud prevention. So it was pretty manual, and the big problem with that is that it's very difficult to maintain all these rules, and it's very difficult to get to the right balance between protecting your bottom line as a luxury retailer versus not compromising your top line, not to be too strict and to really damage your conversion and have a lot of false positives, which is when it's a genuine customer but the customer is declined. It's very bad for the reputation of the brand. You really have an upset customer, so it's not only losing a sale, but it's potentially and quite likely losing the customer. So the rule-based approach was used a lot in the luxury space, but it's true that now it gets less and less usage, and it's been replaced by machine learning tools. I think on machine learning there is a little bit of kind of a challenge, but I think now the things are evolving, is that obviously for the machine to learn, you need to have a lot of data. And in the luxury space, because as I mentioned before, it's a low volume volume business, so I don't have that many data to learn from. But I think now these solutions have been around for quite some time, and I think the data, the intelligence around the data, the behavior, etc., really now starts to be quite interesting. And I think it's definitely something which I see across luxury retail brands who are really adapting the machine learning tools. I think another challenge is really how to monitor these famous back ratios, because as you mentioned, luxury is a very attractive target for the customers, and not only on the payment side, but also on what we call friendly fraud, when customers say that they have not received the product, or when the customers are getting upset because they don't have the refund fast enough and they file a chargeback. And I think for luxury brands, it's very important to really watch that ratio, because you get to this 1%, or I think it's lower for Visa, quite much faster than the mainstream brands, because you have much less number of transactions. And then you have basically the cascading effect of obviously the fines, etc., but also your website is blacklisted and your performance goes down very quickly. So I think that's something which really need to be watched. But I think the main kind of challenge in luxury is really this balance, the trade-off between the fraud prevention and really managing your bottom line versus the customer experience and customer conversion, and not really watch also another metric is false positives, which really can be very damaging for the brand reputation.
Exactly. It can be very damaging, as you said, because if you're not even planning for the payments and banking, it's very easy to hit that, as you said, the 1% or even lower for Visa, this chargeback ratio. Have you ever encountered a case when one of the brands actually have been blacklisted? And what happens? How do they prove after that, even though that we are over the chargeback ratio, we are a legit business, these were just problems with the fraud prevention tools? Is there anything to get back from that stage when the payment provider already wrote you off just because you made some mistakes, some banal mistakes at the payments and banking?
Yes, I have actually worked with a company which it was not yet blacklisted completely, but it did start to receive several warnings from the schemes, and even that already impacts your authorization and and the performance of your website. Basically, then you really need to start. Well, it can serve as an accelerator as well, because all these payment projects, sometimes they take time to take off the ground. And I think this performance really became as an accelerator for everyone to really move quite fast on the reviewing the processes, how the chargebacks are managed. And also, I think the thing with chargebacks is that, as I mentioned, it's not only payment chargebacks. Mm-hmm. So you really need to look holistically at all your different processes, how your logistics are shipping the products, how long does it take, what are your return policies, and how fast you refund your customers. So it's not only about kind of payment fraud chargebacks, it's really also non-fraud chargebacks. So I think definitely this warning, which started to already show the worst performance of the website, put everything into perspective very quickly. Mm-hmm. And the brand basically invested in completely reviewing their payment process, even the people who are managing that, because that was also a part of the explanation. People who were managing fraud, they were in the company for 20 years and they were not really up to speed in terms of all the innovation, not innovation, but all the tools and the processes that are necessary to manage fraud. So that was quite a good exercise for them. And at the end, they were not blocked, but they did have a big downward trend at some point.
And how does it affect also the payment providers themselves? Because as we know, higher possibility for fraud, higher risk, higher fees, and then more complicated processing. So how about the payment providers? Do they even have risk appetite for this kind of threat? Or they say that, yes, it's still worth it because at the end of the day, we are charging a percentage. So with a high value ticket, there could be a lot of business made. What is your experience? How are the payment providers approach?
From my experience, the payment providers do take that very seriously, and that's why I think it's also, as I mentioned at the beginning, it's very important to have a very good relationship, long-term relationship with your payment provider, because they also contribute and help you to rethink your processes and to improve the processes. But definitely at the end of the day, they are also responsible, and sometimes they even set lower thresholds before they start warning the brand. So definitely for the payment providers, it's a very important topic as well.
Yes. Let's see the next question, because there are a lot of new fintech innovations that we've heard lately. There are new payment methods. So I'm very curious, how does it affect all the luxury payment industry as well? So what can we expect? Innovations that are shaping the future of the luxury payments, and what should high-end brands focus this year? What do you think? Is open banking a thing? Instant payment? How does it affect now the customer behavior and obviously the merchant approach as well? What do you see? These new fintech innovations, good, bad, what's good, what's not good?
I think it's an interesting question, because it can be a very big question. As you said, there is a lot of innovation going on, and I think it's yes, you use all the trends and payments. It's about orchestration, it's about open banking, it's about tokenization, just to name a few. I think, again, going back to the luxury space, and for me, my point of view always is that the payment solutions or innovations shall be really relevant to the business. And what is now very important for luxury is, as I mentioned, is customer experience, personalization, brand loyalty, and obviously security and trust. So if you look from the luxury brand perspective, in my view, for example, tokenization is one of the very interesting innovation, which is, it's not that new, but it's something which is really getting traction because it really allows to secure, to protect the customer data and pass this information across different systems, whether it's order management system, or whether it's customer relationship management, to really help brands to craft tailored, personalized experiences. So I think that's where the payment data is very important, but obviously the kind of the protection of that data, the tokenization of that data, I think it's something which is very interesting and very relevant in the luxury space. It's also very relevant for the we call that omni-channel customer journey, how you pass this information between different systems, between different platforms. So it has very interesting use cases in the luxury retail. I think another innovation, you briefly mentioned, that is open banking. Yes, I think it's open banking and kind of instant payments. I think it's definitely something which will be and is becoming very interesting in the luxury space, especially for the instant banking. One of the challenges which we didn't really mention so far is that the cost of processing payments in the luxury space is quite high, because the luxury consumers are still quite predominantly credit card consumers, and the commissions based on high value purchases can be quite expensive very fast. So obviously the instant payments offer the much more cost-effective alternative to that. I think another one which I see now getting some traction is crypto payments. I think there was a lot of bad press around that, and a lot of how would you say, not the luxury brands, they were trying and learning a little bit, but it was not really getting a lot of traction. I think now with the regulation which is coming and really making it much more secure, we are not there yet. I would see some take up on the crypto payment. What else can I say in terms of the innovation? I think everything to do with the solutions which can help understand the payment data for the retail brand. Payment data is, for me, one of the unutilized assets of the payments. So I think the solutions which will really enable brands to harmonize this data, normalize this data, and really provide a lot of insights about the shop, not only about the financial performance, but also about the shoppers' behaviors, their past shopping experiences, will really help again in terms of the seamless customer experience, but also personalized customer experience.
I agree. And I think the other very important element is the trust, because once we are introducing instant payments, somehow the trust is no longer an issue, because as soon as the client pays, the payment is in instantly on the merchant account. So they don't have to wait. They can be sure that there is an amount of money in the account of the payer. They can be sure that there's not going to be any chargeback. But the other way, of course, it loses the customer protection somehow, because
Exactly.
then as soon as I'm sending, the money is sent, so I can't dispute the transaction. I can't say that, oh, I paid upfront and I didn't get the experience, or I ordered something high value. And of course, when we are paying a lot of money for something, we expect an exceptional quality. Maybe there is a quality challenge, or there is a dispute around it. I don't have the platform to dispute that transaction. So it could be seen as a double-edged sword. And mainly when we are talking about international transactions, as the world is opened up, more and more clients are paying online, even from abroad. The other very important question is that who is responsible for the source of funds check? At one point, of course, the bank and the payment provider, but as long as the money was on the credit card, on the debit card, it was somewhat easier than someone all of a sudden is sending you directly to your bank account a large amount from a suspicious country, let's say, or even a sanctioned country. And then you as a merchant have to take the responsibility to filter out that, right? So do you have any other aspects that you can mention here?
No, exactly. And I think that you are absolutely right. I think there is this kind of shift of responsibility, which will be now on the merchant side. And do luxury retail brands really want to manage that and to take that responsibility? I think it's a very good question. And I think going on the fraud side, it's true that there is less fraud because it's instant and the money is on your bank account. My kind of point of view is that the fraudsters, they are innovating much quicker than all the other brands and merchants. And I think it's probably just a matter of time before it will also be exposed to some sort of fraud or fraud attacks. So I think it's something which probably is the case today, but I think it needs to be also monitored as well, how the innovation on the fraudster side is evolving as well. For example, with the wallets, what is the identity theft, and you have basically different types of fraud. Is a very dynamic and innovative space. So there is always something to be watched, I would say, with all the new things which are coming into the payment space.
Yes, the classic money laundering is always happening through some kind of luxury item, right? It's an art piece or a diamond or something high value. So the classic money laundering stories are all reverting back to something that, I've got some undeclared crypto, let me buy a flat in a country which is loosening on the crypto laws, or let me buy some piece of jewelry or a high value clothing. And then it can be easier to do money laundering internationally. So that's also now it's on the merchant to filter this out. But what I see is that a lot of times, and of course when we are talking about big brands and big luxury companies, of course they have the relevant tools and the payment department and the capabilities to filter this out. But when it comes to smaller merchants, luxury car dealers, jewelry traders, even just small jewelry shops, they might not even be aware of the risks of these. So that's also something that is getting more and more complex nowadays, right? To understand that what is the responsibility of the merchant here in maintaining the financial system and filter out all of those.
Yeah, exactly. Right? No, and I think you are so right. And it's one of the reasons why I launched Payment Vibes. It's really complex for big companies to navigate through all these moving parts at the same time. When you have even in store a customer who your system is triggering as a potential sanctioned person, what do? You need to train people. You need to have first the systems which indicate that to you. So it's really not easy for the big ones already. And as you say, for smaller brands, I'm not even sure. And I think you say that they may not be aware, but coming from the treasury and finance world, not knowing something does not excuse you. I understand that it's difficult to keep up and difficult to know, but it's your responsibility as a brand to know, basically, even if you are small.
Yes, the small boutiques usually they might not be even aware. And when the client is coming with a bag of cash and they say that, give me 10 of your best things, and of course the business is there. And how can someone say no to a new client? But you have to, and then you have to go through all of these very strict AML and KYC checks to be able even to accept the cash, the crypto, or any kind of funds which is coming in, which is a big burden, I have to say, because it's an extra layer of difficulty other than just running your company. It's an extra.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And this leads us to actually our next questions, because high net worth clients often expect concierge level service in every aspect, which is completely understandable, including payments. We touched a bit on the customer experience when it comes to payments, but how can luxury brands ensure a seamless and highly personalized payment experience? We talked about the tools, of course, so you need to find the relevant partner, but is there something that they can develop from the product side, from the UX side, from the get-go? Is there something that that brands can ease their own life with planning for this payment experience?
I think it's something which, as you said, we mentioned a little bit already about that. There is a lot of investment now going on into the integrating payments across the whole customer journey, if I can call it like this. It's really the payments, all the omni-channel use cases, they are enabled by payments. When you buy online and return in store, buy in store, return online, for this seamless integration, there is a lot that needs to be invested. On the payment side, of course, having maybe the omni-channel payment platform helps. Omni-channel payment platform needs to be integrated with CRM, with your marketing, with your security, with your logistic, e-commerce, etc. So there is a lot of this kind of what many people are saying, payments, especially in luxury, shall be invisible. And also for the luxury consumer, they don't think omni-channel. They don't actually understand the concept of omni-channel, just want to be able to purchase on any device, anytime, anywhere. So you have to invest a lot in this invisibility, if I can call it like this. It's like tip of the iceberg, and behind there is a lot of investment on the system side, on the processes side, on the technology side. So that's one. Then obviously the customer service is very important, and during the boutiques is the whole experience as well, in terms of even the hardware you use. If we are talking about in-store shopping, I think the days of these big terminals are gone. Now it's all mobile terminals. It's the sales associate who is coming to the customer for the payment, not the other way around. So I think it's a lot of integration in this kind of omni-channel infrastructure, I would say. And then basically it's also, as I mentioned before, it's the personalization is very important. And how do you leverage the data of the payments and incorporate that in the CRM when the customer, what I just read just yesterday, some of the statistics is that 50% of luxury customers, they want to be recognized when they come into a store or online, obviously in a secure way. And they want retail brands to remember their last shopping experience and what are their preferences are, so that they expect a very tailored shopping journey. So again, all that comes back to the data point, to the data aspect. You need to get these insights. You need to integrate them not only in the payment systems, but also with the marketing, and really use that as a marketing tool to create marketing campaigns and very personalized experiences.
And it's interesting what you mentioned regarding remembering their preferences and recognizing them, because that is also something that, of course, the client needs to approve that their data is being used by that brand. But oftentimes, customers don't even understand what they agree to. So that was a conversation I had the other day with a client of mine, and they said that through this open banking, we're going to figure out everything about the client. We know where they are doing their shopping, how much mortgage they pay, what are their secret little habits of buying chocolate or going for these luxury brand purchases. Where is the responsibility of using this data, even though that the client agrees to give you all of those data? What is your responsibility as a brand, as a merchant, to only use what is really ethical and not overuse the data in order to squeeze out more sales of that poor client? What do you think?
I think it's, first of all, the client definitely needs to opt in, and the client needs to understand what he or she is opting in. And then I think it's also a question of securing this data and protecting the customer data with different techniques, tokenization. You need to be compliant with all the data protection rules. But I think it's also, and that's maybe on the luxury side, in the luxury retail, if you start upsetting customers by overusing their data, it's not something which I would say luxury brand would do, because it really damages the reputation of the brand, and overselling, being too intrusive. It's not something which luxury brands do. I think it's not part of the culture, it's not part of the DNA, because obviously in the luxury space you have some customers who really don't want to be recognized and they don't want to be that all their shopping experiences. So it's I would say it's a different maybe world where the privacy is very important. I wouldn't say that the luxury brands would really go too far in terms of really pushing the sales.
Got you. And this leads us to the last question, which is luxury fashion brands are expanding into the digital space. Of course, they're selling online, from high-end e-commerce to even NFTs, the non-fungible tokens. What payment challenges arise in these areas? And we vaguely mentioned crypto, but I think NFTs is a very unique, specific kind of area that it relates to very specific payment requirements and needs. So what do you think? How much digitalization can the industry take? How payments and banking is going to react on that? And of course, what's happening with all of these NFTs that they were all over last year, and where are they today?
Yeah, well, I think on the more kind of general topic about the e-commerce, I think we've covered quite a lot of already on that. But it's true that obviously after COVID, the e-commerce in luxury grew significantly. It was a big accelerator for the e-commerce channel. So now they're expecting the convenience of e-commerce, and in e-commerce they expect this sensory, the physical touch of the in-store. So it's really, as I mentioned before, we are now in this omni-channel world where all the kind of borders between different channels are really blurring. And I think we already spoke about how it impacts fraud, how it impacts obviously the payment methods, which you can offer, local payment methods, alternative payment methods. So there is a lot of innovation coming actually in the e-commerce space on payments. Regarding the NFTs, it's true that there was quite a kind of a spike in interest on NFTs. I think it's still there, but I would say it's maybe less now than even 2 years ago. But I think it's more the blockchain technology, which is the underlying technology behind which does drive a lot of innovation in that space. And it can be in the traceability, for example. Now, increasing number of brands are offering the digital passports for their products, which basically allow the traceability of the product, ensure that it's not a counterfeit. You have many different use cases for blockchain technology. But coming back to the NFT and the crypto, as I mentioned before, I think there was always a little bit of interest. I wouldn't say it's mainstream for crypto, but obviously for the luxury brands, there is a lot to consider. It's not only about the volatility, but it's also about reputation. It's about anti-money laundering. It's about all the things which we know. But it's true that I would say now I see also some traction on the crypto. I know a few luxury brands who are implementing the crypto payment, and not only for NFTs, but also as a payment option in store or in online. But what I hear from these brands is that the customer journey is still too long, because you basically have to, and we mentioned about that, who is responsible. At the end of the day, the brand, if something goes wrong and you end up in the headlines of Financial Times, it's the brand responsibility. The brand must ensure all the regulations and all the checks are done and all the verifications are done. And I think that for time being slows down quite a lot the customer journey. It's not as frictionless. So I think it will definitely evolve. What I hear today is that it's still, the adoption rate is relatively small for the crypto payments.
Yes, and I remember, as you mentioned, last year and even 2 years ago, I had a lot of clients who said that they want to launch their own NFTs and they want to sell it on their platform. And it falls under a whole different approach from payment and banking perspective. You can't just start selling NFTs without registering as a crypto provider or listing those NFTs as a type of crypto, because it represents a different type of value than an e-commerce product or a service, payment providers have a whole different approach to it, even though that the underlying asset is still something that you sell online, and you've got the card providers for that. Visa, MasterCard is happy to join forces with you to sell luxury bags or fashion items. But when it comes to NFTs, there is still a bit of misunderstanding around that, or as you mentioned, that payment providers and banks, they just simply don't want to take the responsibility to sell a digital asset which is representing an underlying asset, physical asset, but not the physical asset itself. So it's a very complex sphere, and I think the banks have a lot of headache around that, because at the end of the day, it's all their responsibility to filter out all the bad actors and make sure that everybody is playing by the rules and maintaining this financial system as much as they can. Of course, banks and payment providers have a hard time with all of these innovations too, right?
I think there is a lot of innovation going on, and I think the also one of the challenge for the brands in general, but luxury brands as well, is to pick up the right innovation. It's what's relevant for the brand. And even within the luxury space, you have fashion brands which are not the same as jewelry brands, which are not the same as watch brands, cars, etc. It's very important to also be able to understand the innovation and kind of distill into what's relevant for your business, because not all the innovations are mature already and also relevant for your particular brand.
Nice. I completely agree with you. Before we wrap up, can you tell us a bit more about that? What do you do every day, like with Payment Vibes? Who are your clients? What are the challenges that you resolve for them? Overall, how do you make this industry better and safer for everyone?
As I mentioned to you before, it's already complicated to navigate the payment space on the retail side, because you have so many different angles to look at and also to keep up. Like I said, it's not because you don't know that you are not responsible. So it's quite difficult. But obviously big groups, not only luxury, of course, but in the luxury space, they have the resources to invest into that and to build the teams, the cross-functional teams who are really looking into this multifaceted nature of payments. And what I realized is that smaller brands, I think we discussed with you before, they have people from the finance teams managing the payments really bear the minimum, and I think they really miss the opportunity which payments have, how it impacts the customer experience, how the payments can enable all these omni-channel scenarios, how you can use the payment data to complement your customer insights. I think there are a lot of opportunities which are not fully leveraged or not leveraged at all by the smaller brands. And that's my mission, if I can call it like this, at Payment Vibes, is really to help these brands, instead of either not doing anything or trying to build in-house team, which I did, and it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of learning, to basically, on my side, with Payment Vibes, I'm coming in on different topics, either it's on strategic topics or on technology or on fraud prevention strategy and tools, and try to help them to accelerate, give them my learning curve so that they can benefit from that in a kind of faster way.
I understand, and I think there is a huge need for more of us on the market, because it seems like that everybody has a problem with payments and banking, and unfortunately there is not that much of an education around it. We are not talking about the subject enough. So I think it's very important that we have a forum to discussions like this. And thank you so much for being here with us today. I think there was a lot of very important information that we could hear. Where do we find you? How do we find you?
I think there is an email address mentioned here, and I'm also quite active, obviously, on the LinkedIn, and either LinkedIn or email, which is appearing on the screen, would work quite well.
Great. And I would like to again encourage everyone who was listening to this, watching us, that please share your real life stories with us, your frustration, your problems, your complexities, or even the success stories, because that's the only way that we can create an ethical and transparent payments and banking industry with the help of the network experts like Vasilina. And thank you very much, Vasilina, to be here with us today. It was an absolute pleasure. and looking forward for more insights as well.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Victoria.
you.
It was very nice.
Thank you so much.